1 2 1 2 1 2 3 4 1 2. G'day everyone, popping in for my usual chat. I've got some great things to share with you today, so I'm really looking forward to it. We actually are in pre-show mode at the moment, so I'm going to put this up for a few minutes. So pop in, say hi in the chat. I'd love to see who's actually popping on board. Torben put a message on earlier to say that he was actually, I gave 4 hours notice today, so I wanted to make sure I gave people plenty of notice. Torben said he had to go to work, so he couldn't stay up. Bruce has also said, hi, I wish I didn't have to work Fridays, always miss you live. We'll watch it later. I'm going to change my glasses, actually. Who else have we got? We've got Michael's here as well. G'day, Michael. Jamie's also here. Has put some message in. He just said, oh, hi, David. How are you, mate? Altric said, hey, everyone. Reuven said, g'day. G'day, Reuven. Chris is also saying, hello, David. Rainy day in Los Angeles, but still a good Corona coffee day. That's what I'm going to be having very shortly with you guys. Reese said, howdy. Jason said, for that 60 megapixel sensor in the next R model. Woohoo! D. Harlow said, David. Hi, David. Craig says, hi, Dave from Bolivia. Peter says, hi, David. What profile do you shoot in video? Just standard. Peter, I shoot everything completely standard, and I love the results that the Sony cameras are giving me. I really do. I'm shooting everything standard. I'm not even putting anything on soft or anything. Everything is dead standard. So if you want to check out how that looks, just look at a few of the videos I've posted recently and you'll see how good that profile looks. Funny thing is, everyone actually keeps saying to me, David, what profile are you using? Because they think I'm using profiles and I'm not. I might turn that down just a touch because I think it's a bit hot. But I'm so happy with that. The good part about that for me too is it doesn't take much editing. I do very little light editing in all the videos that you see, so it's nice and quick. And I really think the Sonys are outstanding for what they give us straight away. So let me know if that audio level's okay, guys, or does it need to be a little bit louder? Because I've just turned it down. It's saying I'm on minus 12 here. So let me know if it is good, or do I have to turn it up or down a little bit? Who else have we got? Marco saying, yo. John said, hello, David, finally made a live show of yours. Great to see you in here, John. Jean says, hello from Canada. Turned down too much. Okay, so I'll turn it up a bit more. 1, 2, that's now up to 6. So let me know, is that okay? Who else have we got? Imperial, Jean's here from Canada. Derek's also here. Freyers is say hey to all. Peter's also saying thanks. No worries, Peter. Oreo's, g'day, Oreo. Good to see you're in here live. Turned down too much here. I've turned it back up again, so hopefully that's all right now. Casper said hello. Altric, I would like for you to show settings for shooting video. Yeah, I must do that, Altric, actually. I should put that up one time and do a video on that. D. Harlow says up. I've just put it up. Are you getting the DJI Pocket camera? I'm going to talk about that, Gene, in today's show. What else have we got? Greetings from North Carolina. Your gain or something is too high. You have hiss. Oh. Let me check my thing. Make sure that's on 0. Hang on a minute. One, 2. Yeah, now I'll have to turn this up. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, thanks for that. I was using my A6500 on the weekend in the Fusion wedding shoot that I did, and I was using the internal microphone because I sync audio later on. So I had that up on 12, and that's why there was hiss there. So that should have gone now. So that should disappear. Chris said, in the next show, I want to see David announcing a price drop on the A7 III. I think you're going to be waiting a while. How are we going for time anyway? I think you're going to be waiting a while for the A7 III price to drop, though. I wish. I really do. Rob said, just added the Godox 8 V862 and the XT1 to my Sony A7 III per David's suggestion. Thanks. I have to stop watching to save money. I know exactly what you mean, Rob. That's a great setup, though. You'll love having that. John said the audio was good. Peter said, what's your audio setup on the Sony cameras? Well, because I'm dealing now with using this thing up the top, let me just see if I can add a camera and I'll show you. Hopefully this isn't going to make things go a bit wonky, but let me just check. Because I'll show you what I'm actually using. HD Pro, let me add this because then I can actually show you going up. Let me go there. And 1920 by 1080. Oh. Why didn't that fit? Oh. I'm just trying to see if I can get this up large enough to show you, and then I'll show you the actual setup that I'm actually using. Let me just switch to this camera for a minute. Actually got the volume set at 1. Now that's the same if I'm using my lav mics as well. So the microphone setup on those, the actual volume is set at 1. If I put it up anything over that, it actually distorts. If I'm using just an on-camera mic or something like that, then I will manipulate or move the slider, the volume control up enough to suit. But I very rarely use on-camera mics. I'm mostly syncing, so I'll have audio is often done with a lav mic, or I'm using these external recorders, or the Zoom H1s, I think they are, or the F1, I think it is. And when I'm using those, I just sync it in post later on. So that's how I'm actually doing that. What else have we got? Just up a bit. Well, I think it should be leveling up okay now because it's showing me I'm quite loud. Let me just see if I can put it up a bit higher. Langston said, good evening. Hey, says David, have you checked out the news stories on YouTube just like Instagram? No, I haven't actually, Haz. I must have a look at that. I haven't used that at all yet. Chris said, finally worked up the nerve and got the A7 III. Big upgrade from the A6000. Oh, Chris, you're going to love that camera. That is a massive upgrade from the A6000. What is that Sennheiser? I think it was the 600. I'm pretty sure it was the 600M or something. It doesn't have the number on there, and I don't want to disconnect it. I'm pretty sure that Sennheiser is the 600M, I think, from memory. Anyone selling the 55 1.8, it's going to be hard to find that because no one wants to sell it if they've got one because they're so good. Altric said no sound. There should be sound, Altric. Phonomic said hi. G'day, Phonomic. Richard said hi, David. The Essential Light said Sony 24 1.4. It is an amazing lens. Oh, that's when I went to the other camera, yeah. Yeah, so it's the Sennheiser. I think it's the 600M, and I'm using that Zoom H6, I think it is, to put the audio in. I love those mics when I was a boom operator. Yeah, the Sennheiser mics are really good. They're one of my favourite mics, actually. They're not cheap. But they are great quality, and I've always loved Sennheiser stuff, so I bought that, and that's what my audio is attached to. So basically, what Haz says, that device looks like the Zoom recorder. It is Zoom, yeah. Fancy setup. I have the Sony A6000, and Sid said, how you doing, David? Great, mate, how are you? All right, I'm going to switch over to the Oastler Images sign because I'm going to start the show, guys, and then we can continue from there. So bear with me just for a second. G'day everyone, popping in for our usual Friday live chat of Sony news and rumours. There are some other things I'm going to discuss today, but basically this is very Sony orientated. But I'm going to, for instance, talk about the DJI new announcement that they just brought out, the new handheld DJI, so we're going to discuss that as well, and some other little things, but we are Sony based. But before we start, I am going to open up my coffee. It's White Rabbit coffee. I love how I've got to do this. It cracks me up. I'll put it up here so you can hear it pour. Hang on. Oh, I nearly showed you what I was doing. Hang on a second. Can you hear that? I don't know if you can hear. I've got to be careful what I... Oh, hang on. I've got to come up here. It's very malty coffee. It's beautiful, as a matter of fact. So cheers. Look, it even froths this coffee. I love it. Cheers, everyone. That's beautiful. So let's click over to some of these. I'm going to have a quick say who's online before we actually start the show. Most people were saying hi, which we had in the pre-show before. How are you doing, David? Great, thank you so much, Sid. Now, if you do want to skip this, I will put the timeline down below, so you can basically use that timeline if you want to go to the immediate story that you're after. After each story, I am going to open it up to questions. That way, we just don't have too many questions at the end, and basically we've forgotten what we were talking about in the news story. So I do open it now after each story. And we'll do it that way, and I will leave a little bit of time at the end for Q&A as well, so we can move on from there as well. Don't forget too, guys, if you can, please join me on this Facebook site through here. It's the Photography Videography School. Just make sure that you put the "and" if you're going to join us through here. We've now got 3,226 members. It's growing fast, and obviously we have weekly tasks. This was one we had last week. I think it was meant to be overpowering the sun was last week's task, and that was the winning image that I chose, and that goes on the header of the actual page. You can see I've shared some videos on here. We've got Gerald who shares stacks of stuff about different things, but it's such a fantastic positive site, guys. It's one of the few out there where I don't allow any prima donnas on there or whatever. You know, if you start to blast anyone or think you're greater than anyone else, you're going to get booted. This is a positive place. It's good if you want constructive criticism, you can ask for that, but at the same time it has to be positive, not negative. So anyone gives anything negative, I'm going to boot them out. But it's just a fantastic site. It really is. And I'm encouraging everyone to share video on here as well, because this is actually about stills and also video. I want this to be about fusion, so it's going to be sort of covering everything. You can share your Instagram pages on there. You can share your websites if you want critiquing on that. I've opened it up to everything. The only thing you can't do is just broadcast live to it. That's really the only thing that I've put as a restriction on there. I do put weekly tasks on. You can see here that Heldon has asked for me to critique these two images that he put on, so I gave a critique on those two images, and people are sharing videos on there as well. So it's just a fantastic site, guys. So I've set this up for you guys to communicate, so it's an extension of this channel. So please join us on this site. I really would like you to join us on there. It's the photography and videography. Like I said, you have to put the "and" or it won't work. Otherwise, if you put the, your normal "and", you won't be able to find it, and that's where most people can't find it. So please join us. I'm getting around usually 100 or so now a week joining us there, so it's great. It's growing fast. Let me just click back to this for a second, just to see where we are before we start the show. A couple of people have bought some new gear here, I think they were saying. Where were we? Reuven bought 100, the 100 to 400 GM and the 24 GM. Woohoo! That's a fantastic setup there. Great, both great lenses. I seriously am thinking about getting that 24 when it comes into stock. You can't buy that anywhere here yet, but I probably will get that sometime, probably early in the new year. Costa's saying hello from Pennsylvania. Langston saying still have the ones that are 15 years old. Yeah, well, they never date, those microphones. They are fantastic mics. Van said, your setup is really good compared to Jason Vong and that one camera guy. I am pretty proud of the setup that I've got here. I mean, this has all been purposely built, though. So I did build all this purposely for this YouTubing and also connected to my studio. I am eventually going to start doing live shoots as well, using all of this setup as well. So I will be starting to do live shoots that you can actually come into and I'll show things live rather than like I posted of Kiara's the other day. I'll actually start putting stuff up live. That's why I bought Capture One, and I'm going to talk about that very soon. But yeah, I love the setup I've actually got in here. Altric said, do you know when the Sigma 7200 starts shipping? No, I don't actually. Van said, no offense. I'm sure no offense was meant there, Vance, at all. I'm not sure what you I don't think they'd take any offense from that. They've told me that they love my setup as well. Langston said, I don't know, Jason is running around with what looks like a production crew these days. Yeah, he does with his when he's going outside, that's for sure. The O show, there's a couple of 55 lenses on Gumtree. Cool. Van Liam said, oh yeah, we can hear it. Hart says, welcome to the Oastler Cafe. Oh, could you hear that, me pouring the coffee, could you? I love it. Stacey said, hi everyone, I love to make these live broadcasts. Receives a notification from YouTube this time. Well, I gave 3 hours notice or something this time. I thought I'd try and, do it that way as well. Photomix said, Langston Ball, yeah, Danny's setup is a pretty beast. Yeah, they've both got really good setups. I suppose if you're talking about my computer setup and everything, I mean, I'm running, let me just see if I can fix this color balance. Well, it doesn't really matter. Oh, hang on, let me see if I can fix that, and I'll just show you quickly what I'm using. Where is that? Okay, I'll just see if I can change color balance on this. Yes, advanced settings, and it's PAL, and I need to go color balance. Oh, let me just make this a bit yellow. All right, well, let me see if I can just show you this. Because down here, what I'm running, I hope you can't hear, this builder's working next door. Oh, oh yeah, that's an empty bottle. I was just showing you. So I'm running a Mac Pro. This is a real high-end spec one. It's got the high-end dual cards. It was the highest one I could buy when I bought it. So it's still working fantastic. It can do 4K like it's butter. So I'm running this as my main machine. I'm using the Apollo Twin interface here to connect to. That's also because I'm a musician, so I actually connect directly my guitar into it, and I can actually play music through my full setup through here. I'm running this little light setup through here, which is, it's got 4 panels in that, daylight, light balance panel, so that's what I'm running. I'm also running hue lights through my whole studio as well, so you can see up through here. Oh, hang on. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. I think it's better now. Okay, let me just pull back a minute. 1 2 1 2. One, two, 1 2. Ah, there we go. Finally got some audio. This is the Mac Pro that I'm actually running here. So this Mac Pro, like I said, was a full spec Mac Pro. It's got, I can't remember, I think it's 64 gig of RAM in there. And that's not much, but it's enough for what I'm running. It has the highest end cards in there, and it's also got the 12 core processor in there. It was the highest spec one I could get. So it's a beautiful machine, and it still does 4K amazingly. It's just like butter. So that works fantastic. I've got the Apollo Twin here. The Apollo Twin is a beautiful preamp and everything in there, and I can connect my headphones and also a guitar directly through here as well. And that's fantastic. That's my second monitor that I'm running over here. This is an empty bottle. Not really, yes it is. This is my Apple Mac monitor here that I run, and I'm running through Fostech speakers, which are through here. These are my sound speakers. I've got my Sony headphones up there, the wireless headphones. This was my main monitor that I'm running through here. This is just an LG. At the back up there, I've got a 75-inch 4K monitor that I show my clients when they come to see all their presentations and stuff like that. And then I'm running down here, I'm running a Yamaha AG06. That's how I can do overdubs and stuff like that when I'm running when I'm overdubbing in Final Cut. And then I'm running the Zoom H6 through here. So that's how the Sennheiser mic, which is connected all through here, comes directly through the Zoom H6. Down here I'm running a switcher. So this is how I'm changing cameras all through here. So this is how it's all changing through my switches. And basically this is my tablet that I'm using. It's the medium tablet. It's wireless, but I have got it connected actually through at this stage. And that's basically it. Through the back down here, you'll see that I've got a couple of little devices that help me do Final Cut and stuff like that. That's the Shuttle Pro version 2 that I can run there. And I'm connecting through onto YouTube through using these mini studio camcorders here. Do you like my picture of Ken? Have a look at this. I love it. There's my picture of Ken. Delta Dave sent me this, and I just adore it. It cracks me up when I look at it. So that's basically how my studio works. I'm really happy with how it works. It's just a great setup. And like I said, my studio itself is beautiful. And I did post something up recently about that, so you can have a look at how my whole studio works. It was purposely built with very, very high ceilings. It's all insulated and it's all soundproofed as well. And I've obviously got everything wired up professionally that I can add Ethernet ports and everything everywhere and stuff like that. So it's great, and I actually adore it. It's my real man cave. The concreting in the back part of the thing there particularly is brilliant. It's got polished concrete. That cost me a fortune to get, but it's just beautiful. Polished concrete has like stones and everything all put through it, and it's just gorgeous to work with everyone that walks in and adores it. So that's my studio setup anyway. So quickly before we go on to today's news, let me have a look. Richard said, I have the Sigma 135 1.8 art lens and the 50mm 1.4 art. I really want the Sony 85 1.8 for my first native Sony lens. Should I go with the Tamron 28-75 instead? Probably. If you haven't got anything that fits that lower end, you might be better off to get the Tamron. I'm lucky I've got the Tamron 28-75, plus I've got the 85 Batis, and I adore using both of those images. I will still, when I'm doing images, always go to that. Let me just open this up and I'll show you why I like to still go to the 85mm focal length. So I'll just open up Lightroom and just show you. Where are you? Open recent. Because I really do like the depth of field sometimes. Now 2.8 can give you a really decent depth of field, so don't get me wrong with that. But the second that I start to do more artistic portraits, I'm actually going to use the 85 1.8. Where are we, Elizabeth? I need to find. And let me go rated. Now this one I'm going to show you was shot at 85. So this is why I adore the 85 so much. Let me just switch over to here. And you'll see this shot. So this was shot on the 85, and the 85 is just beautiful. I mean, I do absolutely adore the 85mm focal length. So I will use, and to tell you how the wedding went on the day, I'll use the 28-75 for most of the day. But I'm still going to have my other camera with me. This was the A7 III. The A9, I was actually shooting video on the day, so but I use the 28-75 for an awful lot of the day, but then occasionally I will still switch over to the 85, the 35 1.4, particularly those two, and sometimes the 70-200. I also did that as well. I mean, I think I shot this one with the 70-200. Yes, I did. So that was shot with the 70-200 on the day as well. But the thing that I love about the 85 is, and even the Tamron is amazingly sharp as well, but it is stunningly beautiful, that lens. And the 85, the Sony 85 will give you just as good results, but it's just gorgeous. Now, I don't know how close that's going to come out. It always tends to soften on YouTube, but I often show an enlargement and then I look at it and go, oh, and it looks magnificent down here. Yeah, it's not bad. But that lens is just stunning, and so I do change all the time depending on what I want to show at the actual time. So if on a typical day, I'll probably now keep on one camera the 28-75 around about 80% of the time. then I will still change for certain shots, and I'll put on the 85 and the 35. Because I still like to use those primes, and I'm lucky I've got two cameras. I can have the 28 to 75, for instance, on my A7 III, and then on the A9 I could be using the 85 and the 35mm, or even the 55. It just depends, or the 70 to 200. So I am tending to keep the Tamron on one lens for most of the day, and then I'll use the other camera and have the prime. So it just means that I'm changing all the time. I'm also using the 16 to 35 f4 as well for when I'm doing group shots, which is great as well. I'll show you this other thing that I just bought the other day though. So I just bought this the other day, and it's a Rode. It's actually a Rode pole, and I think these are used more for boom mics. So I bought this the other day, but this goes, I don't know how, it's massive when you open it up. Basically, you just screw it like that, and then you can open it up. But it goes massive, and it's built like a tank. The idea for this is that I'm going to use this for two things. I can screw my camera in there, and when I'm doing group shots, for instance, or even dance shots in the reception, I can open it up really high, put it on timer, or even use it through my phone, connect it to the Sony app, and then take shots really high. And that'll stop me having to stand on ladders. But the other thing that I've bought this for as well is to put on the flash, to stick the flash on, and then I can use it as a rim light or something like that, like get it quite high behind the model, or the bride, or whatever I'm using it on. So yeah, this is beautiful. It was $160 Australian. They won't be that much American, but it was $160 here. There's a couple of versions of this though. I've bought the heavier one because I want to stick a flash on there, and I want to make sure it can take my Profoto B1s or the B10. But I love this thing. Has anyone else got that? Let me know. So what else have we got? What else have we got there? So I would probably, if I was you, Richard, I would get the 28 to 75 first. That covers the sort of wide to 75 focal range and anything in between. And then you could get the 85 at a later time. But the 28 to 75 is more versatile, and that's a thing you've got to look at, I suppose. A7R price drop. There is new prices. Well, they're still, according to them, they're still Black Friday prices, so I don't know how long they're going to last. Please, if you can, use the links down below if you are thinking about buying the A9 or the A7 III, or the A7R III, I should say, even the A7 III. Better mix it all that to look at your shiny dome. Langston said, but those hue lights add a nice colour specular to the dome. Yes, they do. And they're giving that lovely tone in the back there. What else have we got before we go through today's story? Sid said, I bought the Netgear AC3000 in the FOU 3-axis gimbal. I'm not sure how you pronounce that one. That is the one and two-handed operation. Think Tank Airport Advantage Plus. I love Think Tank stuff. I really do. I've got that many of their bags. Think Tank Speed bag system with 3 bags, harness, and the Zoom H6. That's fantastic, Sid. Very beautiful, David. Love the angle. Michael said, nice, David, that's sharp. Yeah, it's a great lens, that one. Love Dave is using my photo for the group banner. Well, how good is that photo, Creative Films? It was fantastic. That's a big ass selfie stick. It is massive. Photomic. It's a great stick though. I love it. Richard said, thanks for answering my question. Are you sharpening? There's very little sharpening done in that though, Altric. Very little. That looks excellent for fighting off kangaroos. Actually, that might be one thing. It's a drone stick. I love it. Michael said, I have one of those, but I use my monopod on it for most part. I've got monopods. I've got 3 of them. The problem is sometimes they just don't go high enough, and I really like the feel of that one, Michael. I really do. Sid said, hey, Studio 413, yes, all of the Think Tank products are great. I've got stacks of their Think Tank stuff. D. Hardo said, just got a loader from Sony, the 16 to 35 f2.8. That'll be fantastic. You'll love it. We'll be trying this weekend and next, putting it on a gimbal. Sid said, Black Friday stuff should go until December. Oh, it goes that long, does it? Sid, yes, I agree. My opinion, better than the Peak. It fits my daily runs. And I've always just purchased my think tank stuff. I think I've got 5 of their rolling bags. No, I've got 4 of their rolling bags. And I also have the belt and lens pouch that can fit on as well. And I just adore it. It's never let me down. They're indestructible. That's one of the best things. Sid said, what drone are you using? I'm using the Phantom Pro, Sid. And I really do love that. But check out this footage that I'm going to put in my next video. Let me see if I can just find it for you. Where are we? Downloads, open in Finder. Where did that go? Oh, it's in here, I think. I'll show you this footage that Gino did, and I'm going to stick this in my next video, the next Fusion video. Let's see if I can find where I put it. Oh, there we go. So check out this, and I'll see if I can open it for you. And I'll make it smaller so it's not going to spit the dummy. But this is going to be the footage that Gino did for me last week. I did Fusion on the weekend, the wedding that I did, and this is going to be incorporated inside it. But he actually used here the new Phantom that just came out. And basically I'm going to be using this footage. They're the 2 combi vans that we used. This is the bride and groom walking over that location. So we did it over this beach location that was shot. And then I got Gino then to shoot them walking across the beach as well. So that's going to be beautiful to put into this footage. Remember, it's all about Fusion for me, is adding mixes of stills and video and things like that. I was shooting video as well as stills at this time. And then a little bit later, he came along and he shot, let me just see if I can find it. He shot the actual reception venue where we shot it. It'll pop up in a second, I think. It won't go for this long. I'll only be using a few seconds. It was interesting because the bride walked out. We didn't plan that, but the bride walked out. That's who I just showed you the headshot a minute ago. This was the location where the wedding was, in a beach area called Torquay here in Australia. Oh, can't see it. So I'll just scroll back and show you again. I always forget to switch. This is the location where it's the combis coming out. You can see the 2 combis there. And then it's going to be sped up like that and show the bride and groom walking across this area here. And there's going to be that's the wedding party. I'll just scroll here. Then we go, I'm going to clip to this somewhere in the video as well. It won't be in this order, but you know, it could be anywhere when I start to put this video together. This is just the drone footage that I've actually captured on the day. And then this is the actual venue. Now, the bride that I just showed you, the headshot, this is it. She walked out. It was just a fluke. We weren't planning on that. And this was over this golf course here in this beach in Torquay. So I'm going to be incorporating in that. I can't wait to start sharing this video with what Gino shot. He's got some great footage. I've got some beautiful footage, obviously, as well. And also stills that I'll all be incorporating into this Fusion video that you'll see coming along fairly soon. So I can't wait to show that. It's just going to be stunning. It was a gorgeous wedding, a beautiful bride, beautiful wedding party. So looking forward to that. So I'm using the Phantom 2, but that was the latest Phantom. I think Gino said that was, you know, it is a lot better than the drone that I've got, which is the Phantom 2. I've got the Phantom Pro, the original one. I think he's got the Maverick Pro 2, yes. G'day, Ben. Good to see you in here. Mark said, did splurge on displays and got the Acer 38-inch, and it's really great for timeline edits. That's lovely. Sid said, I got the Power Up Bpop 2. That's a great drone too. Can't see the clip. I'll fix that, Ben. Sid said, my issue will be going to Sony for video or sticking with Nikon and buying... Oh, thank you so much, fan. Since you like coffee, Starbucks on me today. Thank you so much. What was that I just read then? Oh, yeah, my issue... Sid said, my issue will be going to Sony for video or sticking with Nikon and buying the Z6. Photomic has made a nice case for the Z6 and I have tons of Nikon glass. Well, I suppose, Sid, you have to make a decision yourself on that. My suggestion would be to hire them and then see what you actually think about both of them. A couple of things that, looking at that itself, I used one the other day here in Melbourne. Now, it wasn't a long use at all. I just tried it and see what it was like. The autofocus in video is nowhere near as good as what my A7 III is and the A9 is. I can definitely tell that difference there, and I tested that side by side, and I could see that the autofocus was definitely better on the A7 III. Photomic might disagree, but I could see a clear difference there. Apart from that, the camera was great. The Z6 was a really nice camera. It's just something that I would never consider due to the one card slot. So there's no way I would buy that due to the one card slot. When I did the video that I did on the weekend, the wedding, I was obviously backing up to both slots at the same time. So that is a massive advantage for me, and I would have been paranoid if I couldn't do that. So I was backing up on the A9. I shot the video on the A9 in the weekend. And having, I did some on the A7 III too, but having that ability to back up onto both cards really for me is important. Mostly that I shoot weddings and stuff like that, so I want to make sure that that's there too. So if it was me, I would be saying get the A7 III if you were dealing with just video. If that doesn't bother you, well then there's nothing wrong with the Z6, or the Z6. Michael said, I'm sorry, David, I meant to say I have one and use my monolight. Oh, okay, Michael, yeah. And that's what they are. They're great for putting monolights on those sticks. Sid said, great video. Yeah, I can't wait to share that. Mark said, by the way, if anyone owns a Mavic 2, there is new firmware out. If you haven't heard yet, that solves the initial items missing, like pinpoint landing, etc. Okay, that's cool. Thank you so much, Van. Sid said, David, let's talk 8K video and the possibilities with photo and video. All right, guys, we're going to start going through this first story. So, because otherwise we're going to be here for 5 hours. I'm just putting in first story. Good to see you here, Dion. Casper said, Nikon going out of business. Mark said, hi, old Drone Wars. Sid said, I know, David, that's why I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. The A9 I shot is extraordinary. Yeah, it is. The A9 for me is still the best Sony camera out there, that's for sure. Since we're talking drones, I love my Affinity, I think it is, for real estate photography work. I haven't used that. Langston said, my Mavic 2 is always in my camera bag, so it wins there. Now, if they can give me folding legs on the Phantom. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with my Phantom Pro, but I probably will upgrade to the Phantom 2. All right, so let's start the first story, guys. I want to go through this. So the first story I'm going to go through today, and I want to clear up a few things about this 8K stuff that I was talking about the other day. I think a lot of people, and this is the interesting thing, there are rumors coming around that Sony are looking at bringing out a 8K multi-aspect sensor that could point to 4K super camera in the A7S. In other words, it may downsample, and I think that's what they're actually talking about here. But I'm not going to go through the whole article, but basically there's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about here that people are not quite understanding what's going on with this 8K business that keeps coming out. I get so many people, and this is where people have blinkers on, and they don't understand the implications of what this brings. You do not need a 4K television to shoot 4K footage. And I don't know how many times I tell this to people, and this is the first thing that people say, like if you go back on that video that I posted about the room at 8K specs, this sensor, and they're all saying, yeah, you can't see this, you don't need it. Guys, you don't understand what you use this for. If you can shoot 4K now. Now, I know there aren't many 4K screens out there. I just showed you, I've got one right above me here that I show the clients work to. But I don't need to shoot 4K for that. I'm quite happy with 1080p footage. The thing that I want 4K for is because it gives you much better footage when you scale it down. And this is what people don't understand. If you shoot 4K on a Sony camera and then you scale it down to 1080p, you get much sharper footage. Now, not only that, you also have the ability to scale that image, to blow that image up to 100%. So you can go from basically 100 to 200% without any loss of quality. And that's beautiful because what it gives you the ability to look like you've got multiple cameras. Now remember, for someone like me that's shooting Fusion, what that gives me, it gives me the ability to say shoot a bride and then I can keep cropping in. Like when I shoot the wedding, the actual ceremony, I can say have a wide angle and then I can just crop in to see the bride and the groom. 4K gives me that ability. It also gives me the ability to shoot 1080p and then basically to use stabilization if I need it. So in the software, I can add software stabilization, because when you add software stabilization, it enlarges that image up. Now that could, if you've shot in only 1080p, the image may degrade. So it's always best, if you can, to shoot in 4K, and then you've got that ability to work on a 1080p timeline. You could enlarge that image up to 100%, and you can also add things like stabilization. If it's a little bit not straight on the horizon, you can straighten it up. You can crop bits out if you need to. So it's giving you all of those abilities to be able to do that. And people don't quite understand that, and all everyone keeps saying is, you don't need, who has a 4K or who has an 8K monitor. Now, let me talk about 8K, why that's important. There's a couple of things about this, and I'm telling you, and I know Photomic was saying it's not going to happen soon, but I think it will happen fairly soon. You do not have to use it if it's in the camera. This is what I keep saying to people. If you've got an 8K camera, you do not have to shoot 8K. Just like if you've got a 4K camera, you don't need to shoot 8K, you can shoot 4K. Now, there are some real advantages to having an 8K camera, for instance, that if you're after, say, 4K 60p, you could shoot 8K and then you would have the ability to even enlarge that, like I've just talked about before. Because the thing is, remember, you've always got to have more than what you actually need. Now, the way computers are actually expanding and things like that, who knows what they'll be in 5 years' time. And it might be that you'll be talking more than 8K in 5 years' time. And I can remember when 4K came out. I can even remember when 1080p came out. People were saying, oh, you'll never need more than that. You won't need more than 720p. And this is what happens. It's not used for really what you view. Yes, it's there if you wanted it, but it's more to give you that ability to have that crop in. It's more to give you that ability to have that stabilization. It's more to give you that ability to downsample that image and have beautiful footage. Because if you could shoot 8K and then downsample to 4K, you're going to get amazing footage, sharper footage in that regard as well. So people need to get off this thing about saying no one's got 4K monitors. It's not about that for videographers. It's more about for the things that I just said to you, about having that ability to slow down that image, to have that ability to blow up that image, have that ability to stabilize that image. They're all the important things about shooting with these high megapixel sensors. And that's something that you have to understand. And I did say to you that I really believe that the future is fusion in the regard of pulling stills from these digital images. It's only a matter of time until you have global shutters, for instance, on this, where there's not going to be any rolling shutter anymore. You're going to have amazing fast readouts on these sensors. And remember, I often shoot and crank up the shutter. Now, people say, yes, but you can only double the frame rate. That's not true. You can easily shoot at 1/25th of a second and still have beautiful footage. I sometimes crank the footage up to 200,000th of a second, and it's still good enough for what I use. So when people say you can't take stills from that 8K footage, that's not true. You can. The only thing you can't use in that footage is flash. Now, in the future, you're going to get better and better technology in continuous lighting. So that is going to become mute eventually. It's basically not going to be even relevant in the future, because these LED lights that are going to come out eventually are going to be equal to what anything a flash has. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So, you've got to look at it that way. You've only got to look at the Rotolight EOS. That thing is pretty powerful. It's still not as powerful as a flash yet, but they're getting there. And what I'm saying is, what will it be like in 5 years? Well, who knows? So I definitely think there's a place for 8K footage. Now, how soon computers can handle that, we don't know. But it will happen. Storage is getting cheaper and cheaper. How much did a 1 terabyte drive cost 5 years ago compared to what it costs now? So hard drive space is really not going to be anything in the next 5 years. That's another thing that you've got to consider. They're all things like that. I don't think, even if they released an 8K sensor, that it would come out in this first, on the A7S. I'm not sure it'll be there internally. There's a possibility, though, that they may give it to us and it might be an external thing, and that's what we've still got to wait. There's no reason why they couldn't give you 8K external, 4K internal. But these are things that we still have to wait and see what they're going to offer a little bit more down the track. But please don't put blinkers on, because it wasn't that long ago that people were telling me I was an idiot for doing stills and video at the same time. Now, most of my work is based on stills and video, and it's really made my wedding industry, photography business grow. So don't have blinkers on to think this is not going to happen. It is going to happen. People are using it now, and it's only going to get better and better and better. It's not going to put you out of a job, but it will mean that you're going to have to think more like a videographer. And if you're a videographer, you're going to have to think more like a still photographer, because both of these areas are going to be merged into one. Remember, kids that are growing up today are very into sharing video and stills and everything. They don't just take stills anymore. They're always capturing selfies. They're always capturing stories on Instagram. They're always doing things like that, which incorporates video and stills at the same time. So if you're left behind, you're not going to have a job. And that's the thing. You're going to be like an old film shooter that refused to move over to film, and they all went out of business. How many places did you see close that only ran in film? I know that many studios in Melbourne that closed due to the fact that they wouldn't change. I mean, they're even struggling now with digital, but I knew a lot that closed before because they refused to move over to digital. So I'm just saying, think about the future. Try and do what I've done. It's a big learning curve, but try if you can to learn stills and video at the same time. Become an expert at one, though, before you move on to the next, but you are going to have to incorporate both. So that's an interesting thing. So basically, it's just talking about this 8K multi-aspect sensor that could be coming in the future. 10-bit, and it's got 10 EV of dynamic range. And they're saying the video is more likely to be made from 12 or 14-bit capture as well. But I'll put this document down below to see what you guys think about it. So let's open that up to questions just for a minute on the discussion, because I'd love to know what you guys think like that. But I definitely think it's it's definitely going to be the way the future's going to go, guys. Carl said 4K TVs are down to $200 in the US with the holiday sales. Yes, they are getting cheaper and cheaper, Carl, but I very rarely supply anything in 4K. But I often shoot in 4K and then downsample to 1080p if I want the ultimate quality. Because the image is so much crisper if you're dealing with that. Remember, the Sony cameras are already 6K, and they're downsampling that to 4K in the A7 III and the A9. I just had a donation, so let me just go down and check this. Java said, your enthusiasm is inspiring. Thanks so much, Java. I just don't want people to get caught out, to think that it's just about shooting for 4K televisions, and it's not. Sid said, Sony has to get the APC cameras in the A7 body. Yes, I think that's going to happen, Sid, to avoid the overheating in the A6300 and the A6500 for video, which you have covered in the past. Yep, they do. Because there's no way, I don't think they can put that sensor in the small body like it is. It's not going to handle the heat. So it's definitely going to have to be put into a larger camera. Mark said 8K for cropping and compressing plus photographs, it will change everything. I'm with you, Mark, and I think it will. To capture that perfect moment, remember, it's like shooting an A9. An A9's getting close. When you're shooting at 20 frames per second, you're getting close to shooting video, aren't you? So basically, you're going to be doing the same thing. You're just going to have that shooting for, say, 10 seconds, and then you'll grab that still that's coming out of it. You'll still have flash, because if you need to overpower the sun, you're still going to be using flash. So you're still going to have to use your photography skills, and there'll be times where I just would do that. But if you're dealing with, say, wedding video, for instance, you could just basically record the whole day and then grab the stills that you needed out of it. And I think, like, I don't get upset by that. I'm not threatened by that. I know some of you may be, but it certainly doesn't upset me or threaten me about anything, because you still need to be an artist to get that decent footage. It doesn't matter how good the cameras are out there. If you can't pose that bride, if you can't pose that model, if you can't interact with that model, your footage is still going to look like crap. And pulling a still image out of crap is still going to give you crap. So don't stress about it. The art is still there. It's like when I shoot Fusion, I just do it exactly the same way I do with shooting stills. When I'm doing the video, I do it exactly the same way. So I'm not changing anything. All I'm doing is I'm capturing it moving rather than being still. So don't be threatened by it, guys. Embrace it. It's a fantastic thing. And like I said, if you don't want 8K, you don't need to use 8K. But be thankful that you've got it if you need it. That's, something I'd just like people to understand. Casper said, nobody cares what Nikon shooters think. I think Casper's having a go there at PhotoMic. They're always having a go at one another. Michael said, grabbing stills will be cool from 8K. Yeah, well, I've done it from the Panasonic, from the 4K, and it's actually quite good. I haven't done it from the Sonys, though. Dion says, manufacturers are bringing out 8K TVs for 2020 Olympics. Yep, it's going to happen, Dion. Haas says, your 8K and 4K talk reminds me of the people who say they do not need the tilting screen, just don't use it. Exactly, and I'm all for that. I want a tilty screen, and it always just amazes me because when people say, I don't want it, well, don't use it. Keep it closed. Keep it against the camera, and it still looks the same. But if you've got it, it's there. And I just think, that's an added bonus. Casper said, A9 is all I need. And I agree with you at the moment. I do need another video camera though, Casper. I was tempted to buy another A9, but I know for certain that the A9 at the moment with 1,000 off, I think is a bargain. That camera, if you compare that to anything Nikon's got and anything that Canon has got, is an absolute bargain at that price range at this moment. That's why I suggest anyone that's even thinking about it to go and get it. But I know if I buy it, I need more of a video camera for what I do now. I know if I buy it, they're going to announce the A7 III immediately, and that's why I'm just going to hold off for the moment. Carl said, the standard new TV in fall of 2018 is 4K. It's difficult to find anything with less resolution. Exactly. They are now out there all the time, and this is why I keep hearing this argument saying no one has a 4K television, and I don't believe that's true anymore. I've got two in the house. I've got one in my home and I've got one right there. Venom says, Carl Ryan, I think my brother got a 58 4K TV for like $250 the other day. Wow, that's really cheap. Michael said, Casper G-Master, the A9 number 1. I agree. Casper said Sony. PhotoMic says you can already do all that with 4K and people don't even watch that. But like I said, PhotoMic, it's not about the watching the 4K. And this is why I was trying to say to you that it's not about that. It's having the ability to enlarge that video. It's having that ability to use stabilization on that video and things like that. It's having that ability to downsample that and get better footage. So it's got nothing to do with viewing 4K TV, and that's why I keep saying it, that's irrelevant. Dion said both LG and Samsung have 8K TVs. Casper said true Ike. Carl said... no damn votes yet. I know it'll happen. Don't worry. John said, unfortunately, Apple and Microsoft are trying to push people towards cloud storage. Whether that... we may get enough eventually. Mark said, I will say it again here, Beijing Olympics will be mostly shot on mirrorless cameras. You're probably right. Venom says, the Olympics should be telling about the direction of cameras. PhotoMix said, so basically shoot JPEG, folks, because pulling stills from video is the same thing. Well, I don't think JPEG is that bad anymore, PhotoMic. There's two ways that you can do this. If you know your exposure, shooting your JPEG is fine. And I 90% of the time, I could just use JPEGs now. What I am doing, though, with my stills, I am shooting JPEG and RAW, but a lot of the time I'm just using the JPEGs because they're so good now out of the cameras. And if I need to edit anything, then I'll go to the RAW. I download both. I download the JPEG files and I also download the RAW files. But I'm getting less and less need to use the RAWs now because I'm finding particularly with the A9 and the A7 III. I haven't got the A7R III, but I know that's probably the same. The JPEGs from that camera, from the camera, are really good, and I do like using them. So I can't see that's really going to be much of an issue. And you eventually, Photomiak, you're eventually going to get RAW in these cameras as well. If you look at the Red camera, that's RAW. So don't believe that it can only shoot JPEG. You could actually shoot RAW. Thank you so much, Java, for the donation. Sid said, I agree with David. There is no way to get around video and photo. You must learn both. There is so much money in it if it's done well. And it just gives you another major option that you can market yourself. And that's one great thing. And I've often had brides come here and I'll be in the interview and then all of a sudden I'll tell them that I do video and they just immediately go, oh, really? They don't have to pay for an extra meal or 2 meals for other people. They don't have to pay extra money. I mean, they have to pay me for that, of course, but I charge $1,500. It's just gone up. I'll charge $1,500 for that 3 to 5 minute highlight video that I'm giving. So that now is in my pocket. It makes, often the bride will say yes immediately because she doesn't then have to work with a whole nother supplier. Everything works easier. It's easier on timing because we don't have to allow extra time to shoot everything. And they get everything from me all in one go. And it's such a big bonus for what I'm after. And the way that we're moving, you're going to get more and more people demanding that you shoot video as well as stills. It's only a matter of time. They won't hire you unless you can give both. This live, yes it is, Robert. Sid said, I'm using Adobe Premiere. Have you used it, David? And if so, what's the difference? Yes, I used to use Premiere, Sid, but I didn't like it. So I moved to Final Cut. Because I'm using Mac, Final Cut works much better, I believe. Because I'm shooting 4K. Well, it might be better now, I don't know. But when I was using 4K on Premiere, even my Mac Pro struggled. It struggled running everything in real time. If I was putting effects on and things like that, it was really chugging along. Whereas I can put unbelievable amounts of processing, filters, whatever, stabilization, and it's all real time on my Mac. So that's the difference. If you're running a Mac, Final Cut Pro will run better than anything out there if you're dealing with things like 4K footage. And that's the reason why I moved over, because it just runs so much faster on my machine. I just didn't like Adobe Premiere due to that. I didn't mind the program, but I just didn't like how slow it was. Robert said, so far as editing video and stills, what CPU specs will one need? Well, if you're dealing with 4K, you need as high as you can possibly go. I mean, that's the thing. The more specs you have, the better your graphics card and things like that, the better it will process if you're dealing with doing things like color correction or adding stabilization and things like that. So I just say, look, there is a minimum. I mean, you can get that from, say, for instance, the sites if you look at them, but I would try and spend as much as you can on getting things like RAM, a decent graphic card, and a decent processor. Haas says, so Sid, I've heard Final Cut renders a lot quicker. It's much faster in processing, that's for sure. Studio says, lots of money there, even in video gravestones. Photomiak says, Haas, it's true. Final Cut is much faster on Macs at least. Where were we? Delta Dave says, 8K is definitely the future. Sincerely, Betamax. I know Betamax, and Betamax, the interesting thing was a better system, but it disappeared, didn't it? Dion says, I have a 4K and a 4K monitor. Sid says, I have heard using Mac Minis for Final Cut X and 8 gigs of RAM. I think it struggles a little bit, the Mac Mini, if you're dealing with too much footage, though, due to the fact of the graphics cards just on the bus on that, which is a problem with the Mac Mini. Johnny 4 Eyes says, everyone sells and buys 4K TVs these days. Now we need decent content. Robert Daniel says it's official, a Nikon D6 Carbon Fiber Edition. That'd be a lovely camera. I used to have the D4S and I love that camera, Robert. So I'm sure the D6 will be amazing. Yeah, they'll probably bring that out for the Olympics. Casper said, I can't believe David Oastler is buying a G Master lens. I wonder who is going to carry it for him. That's a light one though, Casper. That's so light, that 24. It really is light. That's the reason why I'll buy that one, I think. Lee said, I'm just beginning to like photography. I take pictures of my car all the time, but I don't have a camera. What camera would you recommend for a beginner? Well, if you're a real beginner, you could get something like the A6500 if you wanted to go in at the lower end, Lee. If you can afford it, the A7 III is a great camera that will give you the room to grow. But really, any camera is amazing that's out there. I mean, if you're dealing with an A6000, that's still going to give you amazing images. If you're dealing with Fuji, an X-T2 will give you amazing images. There's no real bad camera out there at the moment. I mean, if you think how much these cameras, what you can do with these cameras compared to years ago, they're amazing. So it's hard to say. But the A6500, yeah, is a great camera. Johnny Four Eyes, Lee, start with something with Sony. I say this as an amateur Canon user with too much glass to switch. Photomix says make JPEG great again. Thomas says, I have 4K TV for over a year. My TV is also a smart TV and it's already outdated. I know they outdate so fast. Michael said, I've seen some JPEGs that look better than some RAW files. And they do. The thing is, Michael, that the processing inside the Sonys now is so good. Look at Fuji. Fuji's X-T3 and X-T2, all the Fuji files actually produce amazing JPEGs. So don't discount the JPEGs. And the thing you've got to understand is, unless the image really needs to be manipulated quite a bit, there's nothing wrong with JPEGs. And I don't know why JPEGs have such a bad name out there, because if you're dealing, they used to give not that good quality. The problem with JPEGs is they don't have the recovery that you've got with RAW. So if you're dealing with boosting shadows and things like that, they just can't do the same thing. So that's something you've got to be mindful of. But if you are exposing correctly, there's no reason why you can't use JPEG, guys. No reason at all. And like I said, I often do use the JPEGs now because they're sharpened in camera. They have the contrast in camera. They're beautiful coming straight out of cameras. So, yeah. Scott said, yep, I've been trying to integrate video into my architectural photography. I want to create highlight vids for specific projects plus behind-the-scenes video. And that's what you should do, Scott, because architecture will be fantastic. Real estate, doing stuff like that would be fantastic. Ben, who's in here before, I'm not sure if he's still here, does it all the time. Scott's, I film 4K for all my videos and edit 1080p. I tried editing in 4K, but it's not as good. I crop and Ken burns all the time. And I don't blame you, Scott's. That's why I'm hanging out for a 4K 60p camera, though, because the problem for me is I like to slow down my footage because I'm doing wedding videos and I love that slow motion. So due to the fact that Sony don't have 4K 60p, I've got to shoot 1080, 50 or 60 and then I can slow it down in post. I'm dearly waiting for a 4K 60, then I can actually shoot 4K 60 and create something on the timeline and slow it down in 4K. Love it too, guys. If you could give me a thumbs up, I really would appreciate that. Dion said there is a Sony photographer that only shoots 4K and gets stills from it. All his stills come from 4K. You'd be surprised, Dion, how good those stills can be. It really is amazing if you play around with them. I've done, like I said, I did a few with the Panasonic and I was amazed at how good it was. And like I said, it's only going to get better and better. If you're dealing with 8K, it's going to be incredible. Where were we? We'll have to move on in a minute for the next story. Sid said, Premiere is coded like crap. It's slow even on my 6-core PC. That's why I moved away from that. It really didn't work for me. That's why I went to Final Cut. Final Cut, I know people often hate Macs, but Final Cut is butterly smooth if you're dealing with high-end video. It really is incredibly smooth. John said, I know in 2010 that video and photography was going to be the upcoming thing when I took a course in motion graphics. Exactly right, John. And it's only going to get more and more. Sid said, no, Casper, David is buying the G Master 400. I don't think so. Zoe Moments said, for editing 4K video and photo, I say Anything 10, 12, 16 cores is good. Plus will work a charm for 32 gigabytes of RAM at a minimum. I cannot stress that enough. 64 gigabytes if you can. And the GPU is saying a 1080 Ti or 1080X Ti scratch disk. That's if you're dealing with Windows. Like I said, I don't have Windows machines, so I can't comment on that. Haas says, I finally got the Tamron lens early this week. I'm using it on the A6500. I'll bet you love it. I'm just a hobbyist, so it fulfills all the needs. Sharp, solid build, probably the one and only lens I need, and I don't blame you. It's an incredible lens. Imagine seeing David in 8K stream. I know you may one day. PetaPixel says nothing wrong with JPEGs when you've got that great Nikon color science. And PetaPixel says presets plus JPEG fine equals 1,000 likes on Instagram. Exactly, PetaPixel. Ben said, oh yeah, still here. All right, let's keep going down. I'm going to put next story. All right, so next story. Let me switch over here because I want to talk to you about this. I noticed today that Capture 12 came out. I did purchase it. Now, the reason why I'm saying to this is if you are thinking about buying it, I noticed that if you go to Sony Alpha Rumors, they have got a 10% code. Now, it doesn't usually last for long, and it's just that AMSAR. So if you do want to get it, you can get 10% off if you use that AMSAR through the Sony Alpha Rumors link. So that's a great thing if you did want to get it cheaper. I purchased it. I opened it. I still haven't used it. So it's going to be interesting to see how many of you guys are using it. But my intention really is just to use this probably for when I'm doing the live shooting in the studio. I'll be probably tethering to Capture 12. But I did purchase it this morning. I'm still not sure about what's new. I noticed there was some luminosity masks or something that were added in this version that are meant to be quite powerful. I noticed Matt Granger did a video about it this morning. So it does have all these luminosity masks that you can now put in. And you have full control basically if you're dealing over here between your highlights and shadows, sensitivity and everything else. You can also display the masks. It has linear gradient masks put in now. You've got the radial gradient masks as well. It's got much better shortcut manager, I believe. There's also this new plugin ecosystem. Now, I'm not sure about what plugins that lets me use. Someone in the live chat who is up on using Capture One may let me know. Does it work with things like the On1 plugins and things like that work in that system? If I was running plugins through Photoshop, will it work? So let me know all about that because I'd love to know. And there's just multiple things. Like I said, I can't discuss it more because I haven't used it yet, but I noticed there's a lot of Fujifilm simulation in here as well. Now, I suppose will that work with only Fuji cameras, these Fujifilm simulations? Or do those Fuji simulations work with any camera? This is something that you guys at work doing this can tell me about. There is new lens support, so it will support things like the Z6, Z7, Fujifilm GFR, the Canon EOS R and the Canon EOS M50 as well. And there is some movies down there. I'll leave this link down below. Cheers, by the way. Cheers for coffee. I'm just going to pour another bit of coffee. So let me know. And let me know in the comment, because I'll be really curious to know a couple of things before we switch over to the discussion on this. How many of you have left Lightroom to move on to Capture One? And you can even talk about this in the comments down below, because I'd love to know what you guys think about this. But how many of you have actually moved away from Lightroom? Is the catalog, does the catalog work fairly well? Now, I'm wondering whether this version 12 has got better cataloging than what version 11 had. I did purchase version 11, but I didn't even open it. But I purchased version 12 today because of that discount on Sony Alpha Rumors. So I did upgrade it, and I thought, well, I might as well anyway. But how many of you have had problems moving over? Have you found it's an easy process moving over? Is the cataloguing system fairly good? Because I'd love to have a discussion on this so we can talk about it. I know a lot of people are telling me that it handles the Sony Color Science much better, that it will render the files much better than what, say, Lightroom will. Particularly with things like your color balance and things like that comes through true to how Sony would actually use it. So let's open up to the chat and we can have a brief discussion about that. So the things I'm interested in are the cataloguing, how hard was it to switch over, whether you've regretted going over. Is it faster than Lightroom in that regard? It's more the cataloguing that stops me from moving over though. So let's open that up to the discussion. Because I'd be really curious to know. Oh, thank you so much, Donnell. You gave me $4.99. Really enjoy your channel. Thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate that. I really do. You guys mean the world to me. Let's go. Where'd I put that next story down there? Oh, there, next story. DaVinci Resolve is extremely good for editing, comes with Fusion, and a once-off payment with a lifetime upgrade. Yeah, I do hear a lot of good reports about DaVinci as well. Thank you so much for the donation. Robert said, I know a Tog from Sweden using the A9 with a 400 2.8, sold his Nikon, ain't looking back. I've never looked back, Robert, from selling my Nikon gear, ever. It was the best thing I've ever done. You know what Ben said to me the other day when we were doing the wedding? Ben was my second shooter the other day, and he'll vouch for it. Ben said to me the other day, because there was two of us there shooting with Sonys, and he said, you mongrels, I'm not going to say what he said, but he said, you mongrels, basically, shooting with the EVF. And he did point that out, and Ben's here, so I'm not lying. That's exactly what he said, and Ben was shooting with the D810. Yeah, Ben's just said, yum, cold coffee. It is cold. It's lovely. Malty. It's almost like a Guinness coffee. Amazing. Casper said Capture One is fantastic. Yeah, I've heard a few people say that, Casper. Mark said, have Capture One 11 for a few weeks now and they want money for the update. Yeah, I just bought it not long ago as well, Mark. Have written to them and waiting. I think I bought it in September, though. I think you had to buy it after November, I believe, to get a free upgrade. Sid said, David, is the regular Capture One a la carte program, a la carte program that isn't specific to Sony, work well with Sony? I have heard that Capture One is much faster than Lightroom. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to know. Photomix says, Capture One looks nice, but I already own Lightroom. That's the thing I do too, but I just want to give it a go for tethering and stuff. And like I always keep saying to you, I am a bit of a geek and I always love learning new things. And so I'm tempted to do it just to keep my brain going. This is the thing with me. I'm like a sponge a lot of the time. Like I love learning new things and I'm tempted to try it and learn it just for that alone, really. Mark said, for Sony users, there is a CP version that's cheaper. I did buy the Sony version, Mark, because all I'm shooting with is Sony. Yeah, Ben said, yum coffee. Robert said, I use both. Sid said, I hope Capture One doesn't go the way of Lightroom with a paid subscription. I think they do have a paid version of it, Sid. Robert said, I use Sessions. Is Sessions for shooting live, Robert? Photomix said, just let me show that. It's Kerry's in the house anyway, so she'll answer that. Photomix said $400 and you don't get the free upgrades for the new cameras. Yikes. Yeah, I know. It can be pretty expensive like that, can't it? That they don't do those incremental upgrades. I know, I agree. And that's something I suppose that they could work on. Robert said there is also a video I watched that I was able to customize layout to match Lightroom. Yes, I saw that too, Robert, that it looks very similar to using Lightroom this morning. I noticed that. Matt Granger showed that when he was discussing it this morning, actually. Oreo said, I stayed with Lightrooms for weddings. Cataloging is so much faster in Lightroom. For less massive work, I sometimes use Capture One or DxO Photo Labs. Interesting. Why did that just do that? View actual size. Oh, there we go. I bought DxO Photo Labs years ago and I never used it after that, Oreo. Scott said, I will upgrade to 12. It looks great. I've been learning 11 and love it. I love the way you can dial in colours. I haven't fully moved to Lightroom, from Lightroom to COP, but learning it every day. Yeah, and that might be what I do. I might just learn it sort of gradually. I may even leave it until things quieten off for me next year, and then I can learn it extensively. That might be the way I go. I'll see. I can't do it at the moment because I'm too busy. But when things quieten down, it might give me the option that I can learn something a bit slower. We've already been on an hour and 30 minutes, and I've only got 2 stories. Capture One works great for Sony Color Science. What else? Basim said, I just upgraded to Capture One 12. I've been using Capture One for 2 years and love it. It is way fast, and Sony files looks amazing out of the camera. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Evan said, would you say that yourself would stick to the A7 III for a couple of years making a living, or are you eager to use each new body release when it comes down the line? Well, I'm not. I do get tempted with the gas like everyone else, but I didn't buy the A7R III for the reason why I'm still happy with the A7R II. So I don't do it all the time. I probably will only buy one camera, the A7000 or the A7S III. I probably will only buy one of those cameras even. So I'm going to make sure to see what meets my needs out of those 2 cameras. I'm not going to buy both. I need one more video camera. So you could easily stay with the A7 III for 2 years. Yes, easily. That camera is amazing. It's like if you buy the A9 now, that camera, even though they might release another one next year or the year after, that camera is still going to be amazing for a few years' time. You don't have to keep upgrading. It's probably more important too if you're dealing with someone like me that does stuff on YouTube. If you're going to share stuff, you have to stay fairly current. Otherwise, you're basically not going to have anything to show for talking about new gear. So that's something that you need to consider as well. So that's something as well. But I certainly didn't buy the A7R III. I probably will buy the A7R4 though. So probably a way of getting around it is to buy at every second release. You know, you don't need to buy every release. You could buy every second one. Like if you had the A7 III, you might want to then get the A7 V or something like that comes out. I love Ben said, I hate you on your EVF. I told you. I love it. Although, look, the D810 takes amazing images, and it does. It's a beautiful camera, just like the D850 is a beautiful camera. But once you've used the EVF, it's very, very hard to go back. Terry said you can use the same code to download and install Capture One. Where were we? David, they did a short demo. I'll just show this. David, they did a short demo. Most of the things you asked about, Capture One is here. Okay, I'll have a look at that later. Thanks, Rod. Altric says, I have and never looked back. Terry said, I just bought 11. I was able to upgrade. That's great. Altric said, it's good. Yeah, that's what I did. I upgraded. Casper said, I use both also. Sid said, my son is buying Capture One for me as a gift. That's great. Photomix said, I can see that being true for Sony users, but Lightroom costs way less, even with the monthly subscriptions. It would take me 3.5 years to pay what I paid for Lightroom. I paid $150, I think it was, for the upgrade. So that's what I paid for the upgrade, Ike. Bassam said, session used for live shooting. Okay, shooting live. Yeah, that's what I want to do. But you could also use a session for each job. Oh, okay. Altric said, you don't have to import your images like Lightroom. You can just work on your images from a folder. Okay, interesting. Scott says, definitely feel my A7R3 images look better in Capture One Pro. I kind of like that less people use Capture One too. Daniel Robert said, sessions is better alternative to catalogs. Okay, interesting. Gerald, g'day Gerald, how are you? Very late, but here now. I paid $60 for Capture One. Oreo said, DxO Labs does great black and white. Yes, I remember that did do that, Oreo. Carl said, been using Adobe Camera Raw for a Photoshop for 20 years and I primarily use that. Tried several of the new trial software suites and don't like them as well. Robert says, I like Sessions because it has its own ecosystem for each shoot. Folders that are already set up. Love it. Interesting. I'll have to look at that then. Robert says, I think that $60 one though, Photomic, is only for the Sony version. You get a cheaper, but I think that's stopped now. I don't think it's as cheap as what it used to be. Robert says upgrading now. Langston said, I found Capture One pretty interesting, but I don't have the time to learn yet another software app. AJ says, David, do you tether? Well, I haven't yet, but that's why I bought that program, so I can start shooting in the studio with you guys. All right, so let's go to the next story. Next story is this. I was just going to go over this really quickly because I talked about this the other day, saying how the Sony Manager was discussing that he could do f1.0 lenses, but they were thinking that they would only go for f1.2. I'm not going to go through all this again, but there was a couple of things that I did want to discuss with you that they're saying they could technically produce an F1, but it doesn't make business sense. I mean, it would be incredibly expensive. Competition, they're saying they don't really care about the competition. This is the Sony manager that's talking here. He just says a lot of customers are giving us feedback and we will create new products based on that. They're also saying that they're going to develop a new telephoto lens as well. And they're saying that they're not worried about making bigger cameras. They're saying that it doesn't interest them at this stage. That is the Sony philosophy, and maybe another product might be better for them. In other words, they're saying that if you do want to get a bigger camera, that you might just have to go to another company, and that's interesting. So I don't think you're going to find that we're going to get much bigger Sony bodies than what are being produced now, according to that statement. So that's really interesting. I know a lot of people were saying that they don't want to get fast primes, but there's a couple of different ways of looking at this, though, that if you're a wedding photographer and you're shooting video as well, having fast primes can be a real advantage. This is often why I'll put my 35 1.4 on there. And that's why I'd like to get the 24 1.4, the G Master, because if you shoot at 1.4 and you're standing, say I'm doing a reception, if I'm standing a fair way from, someone doing a speech, the depth of field is irrelevant. You don't get that depth of field anymore. You only really notice that depth of field when you're closely focusing on something and the background is blown out. If you're a fair way from that person, you won't notice the depth of field and everything will still be in focus. But the advantage is with fast glass is you let in more light. Now, immediately when you use faster glass, it means you drop your ISO down. So if you're dealing in a low light scenario, having fast glass can change and save you from using very, very high ISOs. And I'm not sure if a lot of people understand that, because a lot of people just keep saying, you know, the eyes will be out of focus or whatever. That's not what you always shoot fast glass with. It's to let in more light. Yes, you can get that beautiful bokeh, but not everything is about that. Often, like when I'm shooting weddings and stuff like that, I want to show the background in focus. I want to show a beautiful building. So I'm often shooting at 5.6 or something like that. You don't always have to shoot at these really shallow depth of fields. And I think people have to understand that. But if I've got a 1.4 lens and I can use it late at night and gain more light into the camera, and then everything, then I can drop the ISO down. Instead of being, say, 6400, I can drop it down to 1600. That makes a massive difference in the less noise and detail that the image will show. So it's something you do have to consider about having faster glass. So if you're dealing with, like for instance, when I had the Panasonic, I used to love using the 0.95 10.5 lens that I had, the Voigtlander. Now, I used to shoot that wide open all the time at night, and everything was fine. Everything wasn't out of focus. It will be if you come in close, like if I wanted to do a face, yes. But if you're dealing with shooting, just say a night scene or something like that, having lenses that can go fast can be worked well if you're dealing with something that's a fair way from the actual aperture. Now, what I also wanted to show you to you here is this chart was put in. I noticed Sony Alpha Rumors put this up, and they were asking people what was their favourite lens that they wanted, and and I'm interested to let you know. We can't spend too long in the chat because we've already been 1 hour 22. I'd love you guys in the chat below to let us know, what would you love if you had to have a fast glass, another lens, what would you love to actually have? Because Nikon is saying that they're going to design a 0.65 autofocus lens. That's mentioned, they're bragging about it here. It allows a 0.65 lens. But you click on this poll. I clicked on that I'd love an 85 1.2. and I noticed 11% have said that. But it's interesting because most people are saying a 2470 F2. That's had 20% of the vote. A lot of people have also said a 35 1.2. 50 1.2 is next. 12 to 24 F2. 85 1.2 is up there. Like I said, I'd love to have that. 70 to 200 F2. 105 1.4. 200 mil 1.8. And the 24 1.2. So, like I said, you don't have to let us know in the chat now about that, but I'd love to know what you're thinking about that, particularly in the discussion down below, because we'll probably be here all day. So let me just come back to the discussion for a minute before we just go to the next story. I'm just trying to see what people are saying. Mark said, upgrade to Capture 112 is 150 AU after 10% discount. Yeah, I got that 10% discount from Sony Alpha Rumors, Mark, and I paid 150, yeah. Langston said, but that doesn't answer the original question. FCP versus, in one discussion, crappy code is another. Well, all I was saying, Langston, was for me, if you're asking about that initial question, I found it slow. I found Premiere was just too slow for the way that I worked. And I was getting frustrated shooting 4K. When I used to use Premiere, it was when 4K first came out, and Premiere was like a dog. It was that slow. It was terrible. It wasn't usable, and I still hear those problems with it chugging along. Final Cut for me particularly was working seamless, so that's why I moved over. What else? People are just talking about that. Aaron's here. G'day, Aaron. Enjoying your photos with the Tamron. He's showing from overseas. Carl says, use Sony Imaging Edge and Lightroom for tethering. Yes, I could have gone that way too. Will automatically load the calibrated camera lens profiles and open into Photoshop directly. That's cool. Photomix says, that's one of the reasons why I stay with a Mac. Me too. That's probably the only reason why I stay with Mac, because I'm locked in with Final Cut. You pay a lot to have Macs. That's the problem. You can get much more PC for the dollar than you can with Macs. But I just adore Final Cut, and there's nothing I can get that can replace that at this stage. Where are we? Mark said, people forget that everything below 1.4 is a real hassle to get sharp because the field of focusing is narrowing. Remember, Mark, that's only if you go close, though. If you're not close and your subject's away, it's not going to be a problem. I shoot 35 1.4 all the time of subjects that aren't close to the camera, and they're never out of focus. There's no problem with it. It's only a problem if you're close. That's the only time you're going to get issues with that. Oreo said, only a few people want 200 1.8. That's a bummer. Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it, Oreo? It would be the one lens I'd get immediately. Aaron said, we have 149 people watching and only 57 likes. Let's hit the like button. Thanks for saying that, Aaron. I really do appreciate it. Sony going to kill Nikon and Canon? Well, I hope they don't, Casper. I want everyone to survive. My all-in-one iMac can do all of that with Apple software, and it works so well together. And it does. I mean, the thing, too, that it integrates so well with this. It integrates so well with my Apple Watch. When I walk in, it'll unlock my computer for me. I don't have to type passwords in. Everything interfaces. I've got the Apple TV, so I can watch YouTube through that. And everything's seamless. I do love the way the Apple ecosystem works. I really do love that aspect of it. Photomix said, I had my own custom build PC. Thought I was a hot shot. Now, every now and then I would get a blue screen, no problem, just reset and go. Then I started doing pro work. I used to do that too. I used to build my own PCs years ago. I used to love it, from the motherboard up. I used to build them, everything about it, and I adored it. I was like that, and it's just not reliable enough for... And the other thing too is I just don't have to worry about viruses anymore. I don't even have a virus checker on here. You don't have to worry about any of that aspect of it. I mean, there are advantages. John said, I like Final Cut, but I also like After Effects. Yep, I can understand that too, John. Sid said, I don't get blue screens and haven't reformatted my Windows 10 PC in years. That's good. Perhaps they've improved since I had one. I haven't had a PC for years though, Sid. It would be probably 6 years ago that last time I had a PC. Casper says, where is Danny and Jason? Photomix says, I would look over my wife's less powerful iMac and no blue screen. She was just working away, no issues. And if she did, when you reset a Mac, it starts up like there was never an issue. Yeah, I know. They are very reliable, I have to admit that. Reset Finder. Langston said, now back on topic, I really want the latest GM24. So do I. I looked to see if I could get it yesterday. They're still not available in any of the shops here, though, so I'm probably going to have to wait for a while to get one in the shop. It was like the Tamron, though. I waited for that. It won't kill me. I'm quite comfortable at the moment with what I've got. Sid said, I still build and love it. David, not true. Apple still gets viruses. Don't let them fool you. I've certainly never had one. Well, not one that I know about. Venom says, I'm trying this on my 2011 MacBook Air that I use for my bedroom. Macs are bulletproof. Studio says, I want the 35. That's my favourite focal length. And that's it. All right, let me go to the next story. So next story is this. I noticed that they're saying competition rumours. This was shared on Sony Alpha Rumours. The SR1, they're saying the prices is going to be above the A7R3. The thing that's more interesting, well, I shouldn't say it's more interesting because this SR1 may be a great camera. We're still waiting to see what they have in that camera, but this may be a real competitor to the Sony A7S III. We just don't know yet what this is going to be like. I am quite excited, and I really do hope that Panasonic push Sony and they make Sony really announce a great camera, and I'm not convinced that that's why Sony haven't released anything yet. They may be waiting for that. Another thing that is going to be interesting, though, is this new high-end camera that they're talking about, a 60-megapixel Canon camera coming sometime soon. Well, when they say soon, they're saying possibly sometime next year. I said to you all along that I do believe that the lenses from the Canon side are probably the best announcements of anything in regard to the technology that's come out. They really are outstanding, those new lenses for the EOS R. They just don't match the EOS R camera at this stage. And this is why I've been saying all along, I believe those lenses will really match to something that's going to come out as the next camera, which probably will be the 60-megapixel one. There's even rumours coming out that there'll be another sort of low-end version below the EOS R. So there's going to be a lower version below that. And then there'll be this high-end model. Now, who knows how much it's going to cost? And who knows what they may still hold back. I hope they don't hold back like they have on the EOS R, because that is by far the worst release that's come out of any of these new mirrorless releases. It's just awful, I think, how they held that back. I know Canon lovers are going to hop on there saying, oh, it's amazing, but, 1.8 crop, single card slot on that, terrible autofocus if you're dealing with, it's nowhere near their normal focusing for video. It's a lot slower than that, so they've held back on multiple fronts. The Z6 and Z7, they haven't done that. Like I said, they really held it back, I think, with the dual card slots, though. But apart from that, it was a pretty good release. The Canon, though, was just awful, really. I mean, it has a fold-out screen. They didn't put IBIS on that camera. It's just a dud, basically, and I wouldn't be buying one. And I want a camera with a fold-out screen. If that camera was good, I may have purchased that camera. And I'm being honest with you, I may have gone for that camera because Sony are taking so long to give us an articulated screen. But there's no way I'll buy that camera without IBIS, without a dual card slot, 1.8 crop, it's crap. So whether if you're doing stills, it's good. I mean, it does do nice stills. But if you're dealing with a fusion camera, which I believe is the future, that camera's crap. The thing too is that the new high-res Canon may answer all of these questions, and even though it probably is going to be a lot more expensive, if you can use those lenses on that and get the full benefit from it, it might be an amazing release. Anyway, we're still going to have to wait for that. And the other announcement was that Nikon was saying that they could bring out that f/0.65mm lens due to that new mount. So that's one of the big advantages of the way Canon and Nikon have gone. At least they have got a much more modern mount, and they can do things with that later on, perhaps that Sony can't do. I don't think it's an issue because I would never probably want over as a 1.2 lens anyway. I had the 0.95, but that was on the Panasonic, and that probably is equivalent to, I don't know, it's probably equivalent to a 1.8. But an f1.2 lens for me will be more than enough. So I don't need an f1 lens or anything lower than that. So I'm happy with what Sony have got. But I just wanted to bring that up, that it's interesting they're saying that the Panasonic SR1 is going to be priced above the Sony A7R III. So that's that story. Is there any quick questions about that just before we move on to the last one? Sid said he's built a Hackintosh before. Carl says, PCs are rock steady even if properly configured with good hardware, and unlike Mac, they are repairable. Yeah, you can't add things into the Macs as easily, I agree. Altrix says, I use VMware Fusion on my Mac for Windows apps. I did that too. Sid said, the Panasonic begs the question, will Panasonic say with Micro Four Thirds with full frame coming? I think they probably will. It might also depend on how their full frame sells. I hope they still stick with Micro Four Thirds. I hope they don't dump that. Langston said, how will people push this new high-res camera after gushing over the EOS R besides more megapixels? Are you talking about the new Canon, Langston? Well, it depends on what they offer on it. I mean, if they do give the features that are missing, it would be a great camera. What else have we got? Stacey said, I use two Macs, two 27-inch iMacs for my photography business, and just purchased a new MacBook Pro 15.4. I use PCs for my other business. Yep. House says, if they had it priced around the X-T3 maybe, I'm too disappointed at Canon. The X-T3 is a great camera. Like I said, Sony need to answer that, and that'll be the A7000. John says, my cousin who shoots Canon says a new professional mirrorless camera is definitely coming next year. Yeah, it'll have to be. Let me just put the air conditioner on. It's getting warm in here. What else have we got? The Canon will have to answer that. Those lenses that they've put out need a better camera. Those lenses are gorgeous. They're beautiful. Mark said, the body cost is not the end of the cost. There are batteries, lenses, bags, straps, cards, storage, all hidden costs for beginners. True, Mark. Photomix says, if Panasonic treats the full frame market like they did the Micro Four Thirds, Sony and Canon will be in trouble. You might be right, Photomix, because the Panasonics are great. I love the GH4. The only reason why I sold that was really because the autofocus wasn't enough for me to do Fusion. If that autofocus was good, I would have definitely kept that camera. It was great. Michael said, words from my good friend Fuji. I love it. Langston said the malty coffee. Yeah, I know. It's very malty. Lovely. Johnson said, have you guys seen the TechPond rumour about the toned-down Canon EOS R coming? Yeah, I have. That's what I just mentioned. There's a low-end version apparently, or could be coming out, Johnson. Yeah, that could be interesting. MJ said, air conditioner, laugh out loud, it's snowing here. Yeah, with 25 degrees Celsius here today. It's a lovely day. MJ said, it's snowing here, wish we had that now. Sid said, I was on the phone with Apple Tech regarding an issue with the iPad, and we talked about 11,000 iMac that will handle anything. What does that mean? No, yeah, can it run Crysis? I used to love Crysis. All right, last story. Last story, which was going to be a quick one. I just wanted to talk to you about this because I noticed this sort of came out yesterday. The funny thing was, I was almost about to buy it straight away when it came up. I sort of went, ooh, and it's $5.99 here, so obviously we pay the Australian dollar rate, which is a lot dearer than you US guys particularly. It has some nice features. It does do 4K 60 at 100 megabits per second, and it seems to be a really nice gimbal, like it's tiny. There's a couple of things that worried me though. I read a number of reports to say that it is only contrast, detection, autofocus, and a number of people were saying that it was losing focus, and that's what made me think I may wait to see. Remember, at the moment you're watching reviews who have been sent this from DJI. I'm not saying that they're sponsored, but they probably are. So a lot of these reviews that are out at the moment may be sponsored. The other thing that I'm not sure of is how robust that little connection is to get it into your iPhone. I'm not sure that I like the idea. The problem is that you pay an awful lot for your iPhone. You know, these are $2,000 Australian. Now, I don't know how reliable these ports are if you're just sticking something on there and it's not in any holder. Like, that's really all that's holding it in. Now, I'm not sure whether it's going to damage that port or it could potentially damage the Osmo. I'm not certain how reliable that is, that system. I would hate it to damage the iPhone, like, for instance. But it does look promising, and there's obviously a number of attachments that are coming out. At this stage, I believe there's no microphone input, so it will only record with the internal microphone. Now, I'm not sure whether it records through the iPhone. It may use the iPhone mic once it's attached through the actual lightning connector. But it does look like a really quite nice little unit. But I am probably going to wait until a few people release videos that aren't potentially sponsored, just to see what happens with it. You can see how the phone connects through that little part there. I'm not convinced how reliable and stable that's going to be. There are a number of reviews. You can see here how it connects. That's your little cable that connects through the side. So I think the way of looking at that is it's not going to get any dearer. That's for sure. Like I said, it's $599 here. It's $349 I've noticed in the US. But I think what I'm going to do is wait for it to be in the shops and release fully. Then look at some reviews on YouTube from people that are just normal reviewers like me, that obviously aren't sponsored by anyone. And then I'm going to get the truth about how good this is and how well it works. I've read other people saying they could notice the out of focus stuff, and no one was mentioning it from the reviews. And this is why I'm saying I'm not 100% how unbiased the reviewers are at this stage. And you know how I keep saying I'm a bit shady on some reviewers that get all this stuff for free and they may be sponsored by DJI. So I'm just going to wait to see what people say. So let's open it up to Q&A just quickly, because I'd love to know what you guys think about it. You can open up to anything, and we'll continue from there. So let me just see what's happening. Oh, $11,000 iMac. Yeah, I know. That's the Pro one. So Sid said here, David, I saw this DJI Osmo. It's not cheap for what it is. I wouldn't trust it yet. And this is the thing that I am thinking about, Sid. I'm not 100% convinced yet. I'd like to wait until I see real reviews coming out. And I'd also like to see it compared to the GoPro 7. To see which one's better about that. Like, for instance, this isn't going to be waterproof, whereas the GoPro 7 is. So I'd like to see them compared. Johnny Foro says, had to walk my dog. What's this all about, the new Canon lower end? Well, they're saying there could be a new Canon EOS R lower end coming out soon, Johnny. It sounds like it's related to the G4 and 5. Is that talking about that Panasonic, Michael? Mark said, that looks like the Maverick Pro 2 lens housing. Yeah, I think that's what it is, Mark. I've got a feeling that's what's going on. The other thing, too, that I noticed about it was I don't think the lens on that DJI is quite wide enough. And you really had to, if you noticed the reviewers, they were having to hold it right out to get a decent field of view. It should have been a little bit wider if you're dealing with that for selfies. I think someone else has said that there. Yeah, they have. They said here, Richard said it's only an 80-degree field of view, 26 millimeters. Yeah, and it may not be wide enough, and I agree with that, Richard. It could be a problem. Johnson City said, Johnny TechPunt had a video, seemed like a good idea. Entry-level full-frame body for $14.99. That's the Canon, is it? Stacey said, let's all give Dave a thumbs up. Thanks, Stacey. Langston said, are wise to wait. The last few product releases have had major quirks. Yeah, and that's why I'm going to wait and see. I'm not 100% convinced about the reviews yet, to be honest. Conrad said, what do you expect in the next version of the A9? Who knows? I mean, that they may wait and that could be a global shutter. We don't know what they're going to give us on that A9 too. We've just got to wait. I mean, obviously, it will probably give better ISO. You may get a little bit faster, like it might end up being 24. You could get the 8K sensor in there. We just don't know what's going to be offered in that. I'm so happy with the version that I've got, though, that I can't think of much that I'd even like over that. PhotoMix says, I like the idea of the Osmo. Studio says, David, what about the 360 camera? Yeah, I haven't looked at that yet, so I can't mention that one. Langston says, I have the big one, the Osmo Pro X5 and the X3, but returned it. Phenomix says, like I would love to have it to use to film my shots, not really to vlog with, but for me to record abs and follow me while I shoot. Yeah, I can understand that. Michael says, I'm really thinking about getting the new Osmo G4. Langston says, why not the Osmo Mobile? Phenomix says, because the Pocket is cheaper. Johnson City says, I'm going to possibly give it a try, Ike. I wish it had got the 1-inch sensor, but its night vision feature looks pretty dope too. Matt Fence says, early 220 for the next A9. I think so too. I know Oreo and others were saying they think it'll come next year. I don't. I think it'll be early 2020. Gerald says, any thoughts on the PDM test of colour accuracy among major colour brands and models? I discussed that, Gerald, in the Sony Colour Science video. If you want to go back, I did discuss that. I think that what they're looking at there, and I do believe this is true, if you're dealing with overall colour science, Sony is the most accurate. This is where a lot of Canon people get confused. Canon lovers love the yellowish look to skin tones that the Canons give. And that's why they love that look for skin. And that's why they always mention skin tones. If you're dealing with matching things for perfect colour reproduction, like if you were shooting the colour of a car, the colour of jumpers, fashion, things like that, I can tell you the Sony is going to be more accurate because it definitely, and if you don't believe me, read that PDN article. Get one of the colour checker charts and measure it. The Sony Colour Science is amazingly accurate for colours overall. It's the most neutral colour science, but that's what some people don't like about the Sony because it does give that different look on the skin because it's a more neutral colour science. But if you're dealing with an overall palette, the Sony is better. Check out that PDN article and you'll see what I mean. And Nikon have got a similar science because it's almost the same sensor. But Sony got nearly every single one of those as being the best sensor. NC Fusion said, DJI Osmo Pocket appears to have a 3.5mm adapter for an external mic. Yeah, they were saying it wasn't active yet though, I believe. Gerald says Nikon Z7 and Z6 and Canon EOS R brought up to the bottom of the ratings in PDL accuracy test. But remember, that doesn't matter. It's what the client loves, Gerald. So clients clearly love... Well, they don't, do they? Because if you look at that test that was done by Chelsea and Mark the Northrops, I mean... When people were choosing it blindly, they chose the Sony. So there you go. Mark Frost said, have the Freefly Movi gimbal and it's a charm for phone recordings. Casper said, Sony way better than Nikon. Casper's trying to stir up Photomiac again. Johnson City said, Sid said, I'll give David 2 thumbs up and 2 toes up too. Thank you, Sid. Johnson said, I do like the Osmo Mobile too. That's what I've got, the Osmo. I've just got the Osmo Mobile. I've got the Osmo Mobile 1 though. The only product I've ever pre-ordered on the first day, but the colour science is a myth, I thought. Richard said MC function, and that's why I'm saying people don't care, Photomiac. They really don't. It's just that according to that chart, if you read PDN, the Sony colour is the most neutral. Have a read of it. Michael says, but I love all of the different Photoshop filter that Fuji has. Langston said, only when it's not in your favour, Photomiac. Sid Vicious said, David, your thoughts on the release of the Fuji medium format under 5,000? Fine if you like medium format. They're not for everyone. It's too slow. Most home users or users like what I do cannot use a medium format because they're too slow. You know, you're dealing with 3 frames per second. They're not something that you can use. You can use them in weddings, but you have to be very slow and methodical in the way that you shoot. Much better flash sync speed though. Yeah, Tony Northrop, yes. Rue said, just joining in, sorry I'm late. We're just about finished, Rue. Gerald says, yes, Sony was chosen best in blind test by Tony. They were. Robert says, you have to remember that colour science is favoured for the region it was sold in. Fuji, Asian market, Canon, Western market, Nikon, and also the Asian market. All right, guys, that's it. We've been going for 1 hour, 48 minutes. I better go and have some lunch with Kerry. That's about it. Stay tuned. I will post some other videos. I've still got to do the wedding one. I haven't done that. The next one of that either. I've just been a bit too flat out. I've been flat out doing some dance studio photos, actually. That's a lot of my market this time of year. I'm doing all these dance groups. Apart from that, I'll see you all again for the next video, guys. Any questions, leave them down below, because I do always read them and get back to you. And I'll see you all again soon for the next video. Bye for now, guys. Got to finish off my coffee. Have a great weekend.